One of the ways I was thinking about it is like what the work is an actual alive thing. It's an assemblage, it's a living organism. I work with the living. Whether it's falling apart or it's crumbling or it's growing or it's transforming into something else, that hijacks that notion of preciousness and value. This was us kind of gathering, observing them, feeding them, being with them.
Hello, welcome to Anastrophes. In this episode, I walk and talk with Pati Starzykowski, an artist and researcher who explores plants and animals that don't follow the rules, those deemed weeds, pests, and otherwise stigmatized. His work further investigates militarization of nature. We walked around Rainham Marshes, a site now home to waterfowl and birdwatching, but previously used by the Ministry of Defence. We discussed his work on similar landscapes in Poland, his recent solo show at Microscope Gallery, and much more. I hope you enjoy. A note on the audio for this episode. Pati's microphone recording was corrupted, so we had to enhance their voice from my microphone. It makes for some strange audio artifacts at points, but we didn't want to lose this lovely conversation.
Could we start the record by you, in your own terms, introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Pati. I'm an artist. I'm a researcher. I'm a cultural producer. And I'm originally Polish, but I live in London for the last 15 years. And my main sort of area of interest is intersectional art, science, ecology, politics. I do practice research. I'm currently doing a PhD. I'm researching weeds, so the plants you can call ruderal, according to biological terms, and looking at the agency and the politics to that. I'm looking at their tactics. I'm kind of analyzing a little bit how their tactics can help us survive or thrive.
We met at your microscope show.
It was called ruderalia.
Ruderalia.
Yeah, it was like a made-up term. It was
Oh no! My umbrella got stuck in the bramble? I guess bramble. Oh, well, I mean, that kind of... Okay.
Is that...
Are they blueberry?
Slow?
I think they're slow. Slow berries, yeah. Well, my umbrella just got stuck in the bramble, and I think that kind of is. Would you call that a ruderalia?
Yeah, I call it ruderalia because it was a made-up term. I thought I wanted to play on this sort of cabinet of curiosity, but also kind of just an sort of umbrella term for the works, the collection of works, and it was called ruderalia, the way of weeds, and I wanted to play on that how we see weeds, first of all. I really wanted to make it slightly more accessible to people, so that's why I've used the word weeds and with the ralia in one title. I was trying to play on trying to show the work that would show the agency, material agency, but also the semiotics of weeds, and looking at weeds as sort of like a goods, aids, and weapons.
Goods, foods, and ways.
I mean, this is like a delight and current in my work at the moment. What is a weed? How it functions in the language? How its materiality defines it as well.
I mean, I think what I like about weeds, and I guess I'm pro weeds. I'm in the camp, but I think it's kind of the visceralness of them. I like. Weeds have a kind of matter of, despite the fact that, and I'm sure that you would see weeds as like a culturally constructed idea. What is a weed versus what is a prized plant is ultimately a cultural construct. But if you ask your average person what they think of weeds, they just see them as inherently bad.
Yes,
and I think there's something
that's been ingrained in the forever in the history. So it goes so deep. It's actually quite unbelievable how deeply it goes. But in the same way, how I was reading early on today about swamp. The idea of bog and swamp, on how we have this really negative, figurative sort of figure of swamp, a creature of the swamp, but it's pretty satire, right? But yeah, for the weeds that are being, I mean, they're mentioning there's a whole thing in the Bible called parable of the weeds, and a parable of the sower, and how, the thistles are casted out of the garden of Eden, so the sort of first nature. The division between the first nature and second nature is how the Garden of Eden wouldn't have any thistles probably in there, and then you are expelled out of Garden of Eden. You're just gonna be essentially together with thistles and thorns.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So in the Garden of Eden, it wasn't a permaculture style utopia. It was like a planned garden.
The parable of the weeds is actually like it has this like really the hierarchy of what's good and the bad planned.
Uh-huh.
And I found it so interesting that early on. Obviously, I think it came probably from agricultural lore kind, and where people were, identifying the good sign and the bad plant, the spoils, etc. But weeds have this amazing ability to weave in between. So they're annoying, right? So some from the get-go, we're talking about the actual political body of the weeds, right? And the I would almost call it like a ruderal bodies.
Ruderal bodies? What do you mean by that?
Because like they have this political stance, like they ostracize, right? It's if you think about it, agriculture would have defined what's productive.
Uh-huh.
And at least in certain regions, right?
We're kind of like Levantine, yeah.
So the agriculture would be what is productive versus what's unproductive would have been casted out. But like we've had this also, like that motion that permeates into language is quite incredible, because you can on one hand trust about getting into the weed up there, right?
I mean, even in the context of like this is going to be made into a podcast, and like broadcast is a farming term.
Is it?
It's to dissipate your seeds, yeah. So you broadcast your seeds. Yeah.
Wow.
I think that kind of thing about the language as well, like I've heard it when you're talking about swamps and bogs as well. Yeah. Like that's also very inherent in the language, getting bogged down, don't get stuck in the mud. And areas such as this, we're walking on a marsh or former marsh, so it was a drained swamp. It was a drained bog, and this idea about like recouping land into being productive.
Yeah. Is this productive land? I mean, this is a beautifully productive land, right? But like it was the kind of idea of productive landscapes. Look at these. This is a
so there's a
this is a cowslip.
A cowslip, and then something is weaving around.
Is like growing around it, and that is I forgot what was it. It's not nightshade. I feel it's a nightshade.
I think it might be.
Yeah, and so I was really interested actually how they create this sort of like assemblage, sort of things, organisms.
Weed assemblages.
Yeah, how they gather together and they're opportunistic.
Yeah,
and they are like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna grow on you. Go in here.
I mean, there's kind of a mutuality in their insurgents.
Yeah, the mutuality is a good word, I would not go for the words like for example, very famous word these days being is symbiosis. And I have a problem with symbiosis.
Could you talk about the problem with symbiosis?
I just think that there is an inherent assumption there that things are constantly related to each other, and it's not like that. And there are, particularly in translation to human, it's an assumption, and it's a sort of it's almost like a fallacy for me a little bit, because I feel like it exists, right? And there are bodies that are symbiotic to each other, and that's how my work started. I was really interested in lichen, for example, and then when I gently moved towards other sort of organizations, of collaborations or affinities, if you want to call it like that. But I think particularly when we talk about like social ecology as well, and we're trying to make some sort of future predictions. Oh, it would be great if we live all in symbiocene, or like, is this great if we all collaborate? The thing is that inherently, I don't think it's also very controversial, but I actually don't think that. But we are, I think, slightly. I don't think we are inherently cooperative in that sense. I think we're. I think the symbiotic aspect is slightly too positive and positive because
I think kind of
produces a new body. But I think it kind of excludes again those bodies that are not willing or not wanting to collaborate. It includes solitary species, for example, that are not necessarily wanting to go together with other organisms. And
I think it also excludes agency.
Yeah,
like the idea of I mean, it's kind of this age-old, talking about the Garden of Eden earlier, like it applies to man, but it also applies to nature. Is nature inherently good? Is nature inherently bad? Well, both of those are fallacies, because nature is inherently agentic. There's different agents working together or against one another. This is beautiful.
But I agree with you on that point because it's assuming that what you said is actually assuming that the humans or the human bodies are not part of nature, right? That's that forever dilemma that is there. Talking about nature while being healing apart from it. Some kind of angles almost. I have it. Yeah. So I was looking at different type of relationships, and I'm kind of interested in commensal relationships.
Commensal?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So you have the parasitic, symbiotic, and commensal type of relationships.
So a lot of people would see weeds as parasitic.
So some of them would have
Okay.
been, a lot of people would just see weeds as parasitic or opportunistic, whatever. Obviously, at negative figures. But I'm interested in commensal. So when you do no harm and do no good, it just sort of coexists in some sort of not necessarily in harmony. And I think sometimes this ideas of symbiosis can, particularly like idealistic ideas around symbiosis, or symbiotic relationships, can overshadow the inherent agency, like you just said, of certain plants or of people, even animals.
That kind of brings me on to your work and in your I'm getting a word on ruderalia.
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 Yeah. I like that actually I have to repeat it myself as well.
No, what's the point in making up words if you don't get them wrong, right?
Yeah.
How I saw that work is, at least in part, you're kind of militarizing certain weeds.
Essentially, I think that they are offering tactics that will help us to overcome or can suggest some tactic how we can overcome an ongoing encroachment of state surveillance and land ownership and it's something I mentioned yesterday, in the tokenization of nature.
Tokenization.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm trying to see how.
Does this mean like carbon credits?
Well, that, but also like looking, for example, we're not aware, and my point is still was talking about when I mentioned that we're thinking of solutions for since 20th century for the problem of the 20th century, but the empire is moving quickly. And it's not only militarizing, but it's combining it with surveillance and technology. Mm-hmm. And that, at the moment, there is a huge amount of interest in what's called RWA, which is real world assets.
Okay.
And that's just digitizing and creating this ownership over natural resources.
This kind of idea of the empire militarizing and the empire militarizing nature. Could you talk a little bit more about it? Because to me, I'm thinking kind of, at least my Roman Empire there, like, kind of, so what? Like, it's been happening. Nature has always been part of the imperial project, but that's the Eurostar going past? The Eurostar used to stop here.
Really?
Is it quite they're talking about bringing it back. Is it that you are alive now, therefore you're working on this now, or do you see a step change in the use and abuse of nature as a tool within imperial projects?
I'll answer it in different ways. So, on one hand, you have the weaponization of food. So, spaces where you could grow food, and thankfully London now is kind of slightly returning. Places where you could grow food. The councils were selling off the allotments, for example, and that's a big problem because that was a source of food for a lot of families. And additionally, there was a social element to it. People would need, exchange seeds, exchange the ideas, keep them physically active, whatever. But what cannot be measured is the imaginary. And I think what I'm trying to get at is on the other, there was evidence. There's plenty of examples where military has used landscape to train for various sort of their adventures and their extractions. Mm-hmm. So, in Germany or in Holland, the movie cinema exhibition, they've appropriated that even here, right?
So what was the name of the space in Poland that you were?
It's where it's a military training ground.
For NATO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And we're walking now on former Ministry of Defence land.
Former military land, but the different thing about it isn't though it's obviously been taken over by FTP and it's controlled access, right? But you still have access and you can experience that. What's the point in conservation of nature if it cannot be experienced, I think. But my sort of question there.
Do we have to go through here?
But we have to go around.
This is called. Oh, this is one of the bird hide they were describing. I mean, let's see if anyone's in. I suppose I'll have to shut up. But hiya.
Maybe we should go visit.
Yeah.
Be tough.
I've never been in one of these. Excuse me. We're newbies to this. What are you looking for today?
Oh, anything that appears.
Anything that appears.
Are you just hiding from the rain? Is that what it is?
We might have all the gear, but we don't have any idea, to be honest.
That's the best way around.
Do you think they regulated those islands, or they just naturally appeared as the water went up?
I bet there's some landscaping being done.
It does look
And
like
there's also old munitions. Like, I know, like, in theory, there's landmines still on this land.
That makes sense, because that
Yeah.
creates the holes in the...
And it's,
Yeah.
I think I have walked here once before, but I didn't realise, like, being shown this route that we're walking, like, it really is quite similar to the landfill. It's just over, I mean, you see the landfill from here, which again, you can only walk a perimeter of.
So this is London's lagoon, really.
London's Lagoon.
Yeah,
That's quite good. That's a good name.
Yeah,
Someone
I mean,
stick
that's
that.
good work. Well, I think London is abandoned in marshes as well, right? You go often to marshes, happy marshes. They're beautiful. There's such an beautiful strata. As I've got some photography from taken there, and it just shows you the strata of various little plants growing in there, but also obviously the...
You can kind of see it here, like the layers.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, this little islet right in front, like you can see, like
Yeah, that's a dock in the middle, probably, and then underneath it's really hard to tell from afar. And then some reeds or watergrasses, whatever, growing around it. It's just, but it looks like it's getting sculpted or arranged, doesn't it? It's like
it really does.
yeah.
Good luck.
It's just the sound is incredible.
It is, and it makes it sound like there's more rain than there is, I think, as well. But I mean, I find this, when I proposed this area to walk, and I don't think I actually appreciate it, I probably should have understood that Royal Society for Protection of Birds managing a space meant that it's about bird watching. But I mean, bird watching is such a people who are ascribed as white thing to do. Like in America, settlers in America were obsessed with bird watching, drove many birds to extinction because before the 20th century, the way to bird watch was to shoot your birds down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so before cameras to shoot them, you would shoot them physically, because no one had come up with a way of classifying the bird's wings.
Interesting between the photography and the shooter and...
Because you need, I mean, there's all these books now, and they all have like, how do you classify a bird really quickly? So there'll always be in the book list like a mistaken for, line like a swallow might be mistaken for a swift, a grey tit for a blue tit, etc., etc. But sorry, we were talking before about access to space and militarized land.
Yeah, it's on one hand you've got the military kind of adopting landscapes to those enclosures, almost,
Yeah.
to train. On the other hand, there is a need for imaginary, right, to people to roam, for example. And I think that
People to roam.
Yeah, like I think that right to roam is something that we should really rethink as well. If you think about this, it creates your imaginary.
Yes.
As you walk through the physical aspect of it, the experience of this, it creates an imaginary. Like I love my walks, and very often when I go on walks and with people particularly, I always look down the ground, and people are like, "What are you looking for?" And I'm just observing whatever weeds are growing on it.
I've just spotted, this isn't a weed, but I've just spotted a piece of Yeah. Do you know about like mudlarking?
Yeah.
So this piece must have come out pretty far from London Centre.
Wow. Or
it's in someone's foot or in... Now that I look at it, you can see...
more.
But we are at the banks of the Thames. We are, this is what's washing up here. Yeah.
So I imagine that this was probably... I think the calf was created from maybe a sand or soda from the banks of the river directly.
So from what I understand about... Do you know what? Actually, now that I think about it, it might be a man-made process. So if you're building, especially, like you see it a lot kind of say around the new embankment. Have you seen the new embankment near Blackfriars Bridge?
Yeah.
There's a lot of construction going on there
Yeah.
to build a super sewer. And they have to dredge a lot of soil and a lot of material up. And this area, but a lot of the dredged soil is then brought here.
Yeah.
So the marshes, and then it's a flat, because it's a flat area, but you can sort of just add little mounds of soil on top of.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of transplanting of
They
central
did,
London soil into outer
so
London.
where I live in Park Royal, you know the
Yeah.
biggest HS2.
The HS2, yeah. You've done some work with that clay,
So
right?
I did that clay. Yeah, I worked with that
Yeah.
clay. I found fascinating working with that clay, and I gave a talk about it as well because I thought like this was but you work so the root time as a mystery involved, and then
Yeah.
really easily engageable. That's the word. Like all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds are interested in it. It's a very democratic material, and then you can it's curiosity. There's things to find inside, etc.
So you did like tactile engagement
Yeah,
with
it's
people.
very tactile. And
Yeah.
it's very easy because you can also redo it, right? So, like, if you do something I did on lies, I can just, dissolve it in water again and redo it again. Which is a kind of principle behind my work a little bit as well. So when they were digging out really deep those tunnels, the clay, they transported it to Essex. They created artificial island.
I mean, this is, what did you call it just then? London's lagoon.
Yeah.
I know, because I'm sure, Venice have lots of constructed islands too, and other
And a
lagoons.
few centuries down the line, people will be walking around thinking, well, they would know with their equipment that it
Yeah.
hasn't probably been there. But this basin of clay
Yes.
on this side of the river.
And so, 10,000 years in the future, this island has been constructed. And we'll be like, this soil comes from Herefordshire. And
Yeah, and it's and again, will we be able to recognize that, for example?
Yeah.
Because
I mean, this is, so on our way here, we walked past Dracula's house. The story I wanted to tell you of Dracula's house that I found when I was researching this space is, in the novel, the Count, because he's a vampire, and vampires need to have a connection to their home soil. When he moves to England and he moves to Purfleet, he needs to bring over 50 boxes of soil from Transylvania. So there was a shipment. I think it's so he can sleep.
Yeah,
It's,
I
it's-
imagine that this is exactly what.
yeah. You lose your, I think you lose your vampiric powers if you don't have access to your soil. Which, I mean, I find interesting because the vampire, a lot has been spoken about the vampire being like an analogy for the capitalist class. But this dispossession from the soil is what you're talking about with roaming.
Yeah.
It's a story that kind of cuts across class lines in the mythos. And yeah, I think you were talking about your work falling apart. When I came to see your exhibition, a piece literally fell apart. I don't know if you remember this.
There was one that was standing here.
And it was quite lovely. It was quite transgressive to be in an exhibition space, in the biopolitics of an exhibition space, and it falls apart.
Yeah, I think the idea. So I think the ruderalia is something that I'm researching, and the idea is that even though it has such a strong sort of occupying agency, so this whole like grime scale.
Grime scale?
Yeah, it's in ecology. There's three different types of plants. The grimes divided them in. I'm not necessarily into categorization either, but I think the ruderal aspect of it comes from quickly occupying the land,
Okay.
where there's low competition.
Yes.
Thriving in disturbance and
Okay.
thriving in constant disturbance. But that translates into a sort of resilience through impermanence. And I think
Resilience through impermanence.
impermanence, yeah. And I think a lot of my work has been around the idea what happens to the work when it's not seen, or the artwork when it's not seen.
Yeah.
So like we know that paintings can be stored or whatever, just in function and stuff. But when it's not experienced.
Yeah.
In a similar manner, like when we do conservation around the nature, like it's not experienced, what happens to it? So one of the ways I was thinking about it is like where the work is an actual alive thing.
Yeah.
It's an assemblage. It's a living organism, and I work with the living.
You work with a living.
So on that note, I thought having that impermanence, whether it's falling apart or if it's crumbling or it's growing. Or it's transforming into something else. That hijacks that notion of preciousness and value that is often assigned to the artwork, right? The craftsmanship, where people are like, oh, well, this has to deserve a collection. I wouldn't mind if one day somebody approaches me from Fabergé collecting, and they say, we found that work Fabergé really interesting. There's only this amount of really precious metals, extractive metals with pearls and whatnot. Fabergé, could you show your piece that is made entirely from burdock seeds?
This is your Fabergé egg, but
This
it's
is the
kind of this
Fabergé egg,
furry,
yeah.
seedy.
It's called Fabergé.
Fabergé. Is this made out of a HS2 clay?
No, but Fabergé was made just entirely from burdock flower pods.
So like
So they're not
condensed.
So they are arranged in cotton.
Yeah.
And they all contain seeds inside. The idea behind Fabergé was that there was always a surprise, was a gift.
Yes.
It could open up and there was something inside. So that for me, the idea was that it's kind of embodies surprise of the seed,
Yeah.
and that will sort of propagate, and that translates into one of the vectors that I'm looking at when it comes to my research on ruderalia, where propagation is one of them.
I mean, I've only just made potentially the connection about ruderalia and rude must have the same root. I mean,
Did you think? I don't know.
I think potentially. I mean, as someone who has at times been called rude for interrupting people and speaking too quickly,
That's me.
yeah, getting too excited too quick. But I think what I love, I like talking with you, and I like talking with some people, is like that kind of blossoming quick of conversation, and that is quite weedy.
Yeah.
Things sprouting, like you were talking earlier about. So I'm just looking. So I didn't realize from the other side that this is
the
a whole-
shooting range.
Yes, so it's like a trench.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it also, like in the landscape tradition, the haha. So the haha is, I'm probably butchering it, but it's in the picturesque tradition of landscape design in England and Britain. You didn't want to have a fence interrupting your view. So if you're from a house, you needed a way to keep the sheep and the people off your land, but you didn't want a fence visible. So you had a haha, which is from the other side, it's level, and then it steps down. And when we were walking around, I didn't notice this step change, but it's quite something. It's quite pronounced.
Yeah.
And it's, like a dugout, I suppose, for...
To simply just sort of preserve the aesthetic sort of view, the idea.
It's
romantic.
I mean, going back to roaming, it's basically a two-step, wanting to enclose land, wanting to restrict people, while also wanting not to have that visualized. And I
kind of like a trench.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this.
Delineate the trench.
I'm sure someone has written about it, about almost the landscape architecture of trenches, because you were talking about this NATO site in Poland, and there's a quite famous quote by Boris Johnson just before the Ukraine war, where he's talking about how tank warfare is not going to make a return to Europe, and it's like, shocker, it has. Trench warfare as well is this incredibly archaic thing, but it's being practiced in sites like you were describing, right?
Yeah. And to do fact distance, when we don't know what sort of weapons they you do. I guess you talked earlier about militarizing maybe weeds, but also I know people shy away from this. The militarizing of certain, maybe not militarizing, but maybe weaponizing of the idea.
Weaponizing of art, did you say?
Well, I wouldn't say arts, but there are
of culture
of arts that can be transformative, right?
Yes.
So I think when we assume this position, then we position in the trenches. So then we have to assume that what side we're on and what hold value for us.
Yeah.
Think about the limits that we put on us in terms of, for example, the right to assemble.
Yes.
And the right to protest, right? What being said, the encouragement on the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
The constant surveillance, now they're trying to introduce some sort of identifications that are meant to be...
You're referring to digital
I
IDs?
don't want to go in there because I think that's such a vast topic to talk about it. But
No, but I kind of...
part of the same strategy of the empire.
Yeah.
And empire has redefined itself, and I think that's something that I have talk about, like how neoliberalism has redefined empire. And if you think about empire in sort of pre 20th century or categories, then we're in the losing position.
I think I understand what you're saying insofar as the empire kind of operates through categorization.
Yeah.
So a weed being categorized as an outcast has this sort of insurgent, anarchist maybe position, where the weed ecologies and
But at the same time, the reason why we call things weed, and also the reason why they appear, it's a direct consequence of this ostracizing or of regulating of the land or disturbance, right?
Yeah.
So
some production of monoculture.
Yeah. So they're there, but they're the reason why we call them weeds, because the product of that regularization and control we want to hold over the natural environment, when we call it like this.
Yeah, and I think that kind of process of control is really interesting to me. So like we're talking about non-native earlier, and what is non-native or not native? If you type in on Google, like, I mean, maybe I should be doing harder research than what I do, but like if I try and find out where X tree is from, a cherry tree, it's a very funny thing that happens where without fail, whatever you Google, it'll give you a native range of the United States, partly because they are dominant like on the internet.
Which one is it?
Like any tree. Any tree you type in, it will tell you the native range of it, even if it is categorically from China or from somewhere else. And like this idea is a slippage between native and being able to thrive. And also, you know, pre-Columbus, who is to say what was native or what is not?
And I think it's still the same question. Yeah. And I had this conversation with somebody else as well. I mean, those definitions were actually established by British researchers. The ideas of a native and non-native. It was to control the productivity of the land.
Are you referring to John Locke or Charles Elton or?
Herbal names.
That's okay. But no, I mean the kind of the scientification, if that is a word, of belonging and not belonging.
Yeah. And I think, like, for example, in weed studies or like in ruderal plant studies, there is at least two categories. So there is the archaeophytes.
Okay.
So those that essentially it translates into those that are arrived sooner than they were the first to arrive.
Archaeophytes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's archaeophytes. Yes, exactly. And then there's neophytes, obviously. And so those that adapted later, but are also weeds, or like the arrivals, right?
Yeah.
So where do we draw that line?
Who came first?
Who actually gets to decide that? Because that is the sort of the question we should be asking ourselves. Who gets to decide that? I mean, I can go into the whole debate on immigration and stuff like that, because I think that's really the vast topic. But
no, but it's a slippage. I think it's a slippage that occurs inherently. And when you were talking about little snail, I'm okay. I'm also just got to overpass.
No, they don't build them anymore like they used to.
It is really beautiful, and I was talking to someone the other day about ecologies under underpasses. Are really something, because they're kind of deprived of sunlight, they're kind of nutriently poor, but people eat apples and bananas and they chuck them out the window, and those seeds can then propagate.
Yeah. An apple has an amazing quality to become porous. So like so if you don't tend to apple and you don't trim it and then cast sand to whatever the branches in a season, then look at the
oh wow!
Yeah, it is for you.
Oh, thank you. Aww. Look at that. I wonder what kind of bird that is. We'll have to find out later.
A pheasant. This long might be.
No, this is where my like faux birding knowledge really falls down. But it's kind of stripy. It's sort of chickeny in a way. Yeah. Beautiful.
But apple, for example, can, in one generation, 2 generations of the tree, the same tree, will be very different genetically.
Yeah, it's like there's apples are also interesting because you go into a supermarket and there's these brand names, which has always confused the hell out of me.
But breed them.
They breed them and they can copyright, or I'm assuming it's copyright. They can claim.
It's probably to, I don't know exactly. I know there is definitely an IPO, so where there is a whole international body that's actually under UN.
Yeah.
That's actually putting intellectual property or intellectual right overseas. And they've done a massive farm. A lot of corporations have done a massive farm to the local farmers.
Yeah.
You didn't know about it, how they encourage them to grow monoproduction of certain seeds. Only purchase from certain things, and then they can send in places, and on those places, then they had to.
And then the resilience of the land decreases.
Biodiversity and the nutrients from the soil. And then if they were not using it, they were penalized. So I think that's actually that idea of control. Going back to it really starts at the seed. And we decide, and again, this is not me, this is not an anti-agriculture talk or you say the cutter, but it's to say that with the advent of agriculture, when we started taking control over land and its products,
this
is where almost the notion of weed was born.
This kind of the delineation between what land is and isn't for
Yeah.
the setting aside of farmland. And there is obviously eons between that and then setting up an international body to regulate a codified crop, but it's on the same trajectory. Yeah.
So you see where we're going with that.
Yeah.
You know, that you talk about the slippage, but I think something we talked about yesterday as well. It's the little steps, you know, the little
Yeah.
changes, and we're not aware of that. So
Yeah.
comments, and we know with that discussion is the comments as well. But
Yeah.
but like if we don't act or find tactics, some tactics to counter this idea, this control, it will take us forever to go back, and we might not be able to go back. You know.
Could you, maybe on that theme, as I think it's connected, could you talk about your work with the British Council
So I did.
and with Botanic Repair?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of us. So I was doing a fellowship at the British Pavilion in May.
Which was created by Kay Bureau
Yeah.
and Catherine Youssef.
Bureau. I did a fellowship at essentially, so just to work at the pavilion. I worked with the curators and the audiences, but also you get to do your own research in Venice. So part of my research was looking at a little plant growing in Venice, and then sort of maybe coining up my own methodology of ruderalia, trying to. I've got four vectors that are defined by little plants.
Sort of making up a new taxonomy?
So my research publishes it as, at least at the moment, it's just four. So there is the first one looking at affinity. Affinity, yeah. So it's a vector of temporal alliances. So affinity, mimicry, stochasticity, and seed propagation. With some sort of aim, thinking about it at least, noting different elements, environmental elements, so the shade, the well, access to water, access to food, etc. And then that's juxtaposed with various little plants growing in there. So it's almost like a zoning sort of state, trying to hijack the idea of a zoning. So that was one element to it. And I have a lot of material that I need to kind of translate digitally still, and I need to look how I want to do it. But one thing I realized in Venice, for example, is that, you know, I've always been thinking of weeds and rural plants. I kind of thinking, oh, this is, you know, nettle, this is a dock,
Yeah.
this is a cow parsley, this is that. But actually in Venice you see a fig tree is also little, because it thrives among these ruins and old bricks.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, it's very abundant, and it gives fruit.
I find the fig tree and the mulberry tree, especially in the context of London, not necessarily out here, but central London, because they are both insurgent, they are both non-native. Use whichever kind of derogative word you want to use. And yet, you know, the mulberry tree is this kind of agent that's used to stop planning. You know, if there's a block of flats that's being proposed, the presence of a mulberry tree can almost always stop that planning application.
Really?
Because they're planted in like the 15 or 1600s. And so people will be like, you cannot build here, there is this heritage tree, even though it is a non-native tree, even though it is an intruder on a landscape in some context.
So the second part of my work in Venice was one thing that drove me. The idea was to work on the tiles. I met people working with clay. I wanted to work with lagoon clay to do that. And then I realized that actually, you know, but I'll be there landing for a month and you're doing all that, you know, putting a stamp of Venice and then moving on. So I decided not to do it. But instead, she put my focus to and expanding what I thought was readable to another register, which is pigeon make. And I started to focus on pigeons and I'll observe.
You have this film called The Pigeon Pavilion, right?
Yeah, and I did this sort of performance sort of action at the neoclassical gauge of Otto Garibaldi, which is the father of Italian reunification. Then I realized that it's been interesting to play and see how people react to pigeons, and there was an incredible analogy between them, because first of all there is similarly to what people do with weeds.
Analogy between pigeons and weeds.
Yeah, I look at things like how pigeons behave.
Mm-hmm.
They're pervasive, right? They're annoying to a lot of people. You know, there's a damage that they do with the
Guano?
guano.
Yeah.
But like that really defines how we relate to the space we're co-producing with it. So they have like those this architecture, this hostile, the
Yeah.
bikes, etc.
Which doesn't seem to stop them. They seem to do quite well with them.
adapt to it.
Yeah.
Then there is this water spray that they use at the restaurants to scare them. So
Yeah.
there's poisons. Right. There is an electronic system that they call the ecological system that's meant to be quite subtle extermination of pigeons, which essentially is called Sistemi Antipiccioni. And it's emitting sound that only pigeons can hear, and that attracts them all
Yeah.
quite, I don't know, stupid.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, like, what happened in that relationship?
Because
The feral pigeon.
historically pigeons were a synanthrope. They were
so we-
semi-domesticated.
Yeah, well, they like architecture and building the cities because it reminds them of the original habitat, which is the shores of the sea.
Yeah.
But also, like, how they negotiate that space. I was really interested in this. I think if it was an anecdote, because it was the first day I arrived to the city, I was sitting with one of the fellows as a bench. And I said, you know what, I think I want to do a performance, like where I have a table and we call it pigeon therapy. And it was meant to be discussing that precisely those values of pigeons and how they help us out in the wars. They were sending love letters. They were sending warning messages. You know that there was a pigeon that was shot twice in the war.
Yes.
And it's arrived and it went to sense this like body of knowledge and so ingrained relationship with them. And so what happened? Why are we? I could point out where people are disgusted by that. And yes, they carry things, right? But so do we. So the idea was that, and then other aspect of it was the pigeon pavilion was that it's illegal to kill them. So there was a whole law. It was similar to what happens with weeds. So there's a number of weeds acts. There's a European law. There's a US law where certain species are prescribed, and you're not supposed to be propagating them. We had like the work we talked about my exhibition, Ragwars, is one of them. Right? They're poisonous to livestock, cannot propagate them.
Yeah.
Because like if you can't deny the liveness of that, the vibrant thing that keeps them coming back.
Yeah.
And in the same way with pigeons. And I felt, okay, what was to this sort of event, which is going to be temporary in nature, and it's going to be a performance, and we can talk cooing, will be tidicum. And there again, I've applied my vectors I talked about earlier for my methodology on trying to create my research, which is the affinity, so creating a temporary alliance with something else than yourself. So this was, in the case of pigeons, this was us kind of gathering, observing them, feeding them, being with them. Nothing but that. And going back to your point on people who are feeling strange about this, I had people as well. Who were,
which I think are the most interesting participants when it comes to discussions of, maybe it's around disgust in general. The people who are already on board with pigeons, parakeets, weeds, whatever, that's preaching to the choir, As we kind of reach the end of the walk we're doing, there's a question that we're asking everyone in this series, which is, if a catastrophe thing's falling apart, and catastrophes is a moment of reconfiguration or coming together, changing direction. And in your practice or in your work, can you name a moment where you've experienced this? Can you name a moment where you've had a moment of reconsideration, of pivoting, of redirection?
For me, the idea was to work with plants as a premise of my, actually with the living really, but kind of plants like, that was my sort of like, I was interested in that many years ago. Well, I think at some point I started thinking about ethics, how the notions of control and in what position I am in towards the living I'm working with. And this is where it got really interesting because, why wouldn't I, for example, work with other plants that are maybe decorative? And I did that initially, where I've worked maybe with, say, roses. But I felt like to truly embrace the sort of not equal, that we can't really equal in this constellation, but to equalize the power dynamic between the material and the work I want to do and what I want to talk about. Is to evoke certain malaise. Malaise. So it's, well, for myself, for example, when I work at Neckles, I love bees, but whenever it's but it's really healthy for you too, apparently.
To be stung?
Wow. Super healthy for you. You visit it out, but the joints and after this.
But nettles, going back to this idea of kind of collaboration, getting stung as a kid, nettles, you know, worst thing on earth. But then you find a dot leaf, and I'm
Yeah.
speaking off a cuff here, I'm not sure, but I'm assuming they're both weeds.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, one stings you, one cures you, and you need both, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good
Well,
day
you
out.
can do that, you can use plantain.
Yeah.
River plant was really good as well. But anyway, so just to say on that, when the pivot happens, as it was really neat considering the power related
Yeah.
between me and what I want to work with. And if you want to work with the living, then I kind of have to be thinking, where am I at?
Yeah.
In this relationship. And I thought like the little plants were this sort of awkwardness,
Rudeness.
yeah,
Yeah.
that sits between us. Yeah, I think this is where it happened, and that's kind of allowed me to then have this turn where more boldly I started giving it back to space.
Yeah, literally. And I also like to think that in these like moments of falling apart and people open the door to the exhibitions and this sort of thing, seeds are going to get out.
Yes.
You know,
So precisely. So that embody those vectors, the propagation vectors,
yeah.
but also resilience to impermanence. That same way.
Resilience for impermanence, yeah.
But so just want to say so that this is the sort of semiotic material aspect of my research, where I'm giving it back its own life in some way.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to see where I go, and
You're kind of facilitating.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm the corporate duper here. Like you know, I just gather those, and then a lot of my works are meant to be propagating, and that goes back to kind of the idea of what we talk about the pigeon pavilion. Then for the months later, I was getting into full pictures of pigeons, interesting facts. And
Yeah.
to me, that idea of knowledge propagating
Yeah.
and seed propagation, it's the same. That is.
I really like that.
So I'm trying to compare this. Where
This is quite military.
yeah.
It's stronger.
You know, a cow wouldn't go through it.
I think that's the point, unfortunately. But that analogy between seed propagation and propagation of ideas, I think for me, the best case scenario for artistic practice. I think maybe we'll stop it there. Thank you, Pati.
No, pleasure.
Thank you.
It's been really nice talking to you and walking. What a beautiful place. And listen, we literally walked when it was raining. And we finished and it stopped.
Thank you for listening to Anastrophes. Sources mentioned in the conversation can be found in the description. This episode was hosted by Christie Swallow and edited by Ava Shear, with assistance from Aya El Khoury and Marie Lehman. Sound design by Kaylin Shu.